Hi guys, and welcome back to the Average Pundits podcast, your home of all things Premier League. As always, I'm joined with Reese. How you doing, Reese?
Good, very good. This week's podcast, as people know by the titles or the thumbnails or wherever you're watching this, very interesting today. But it's good to have you back, partner. I mean, last week, we had Jacob on. Thank you to Jacob for coming on. He is now part of the Average Pundits Hall of Guests, as I've now labelled it, just a quick rebrand. But yeah, the Pundits is never the same without its two co-hosts. So I'm glad to have you back, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you to Jacob. He did do an absolutely fantastic job last week. If you haven't seen that episode, please go and check it out now. But without further ado, we'll jump into today's topic. We're looking at the derbies that have been played in the Premier League so far this season, dissecting them, chopping and changing them, seeing whether the hype around derbies is still currently there in the Premier League. Obviously, this is kind of coming in the wake of the United Liverpool top of the table 0-0 draw. I'm sure a lot of people saw it. Yeah, a bit of a snooze fest. Early thoughts from myself. Liverpool with a better team. I think 70% of the game. I think Liverpool with a better team. I think we had real chances, but we didn't capitalize on it. I think Alisson was very good in goal. I think that Pogba shot was definitely something which could have something could have came of that, but one of the world's best between the sticks, if not the world's best. That's a little debate for you there, but definitely the best in the Premier League with Alisson at the moment. So, yeah, I think undeniably, neither team was 100%. I think everyone was quite happy being where it was. No one really seemed to be hunting that goal too much. I think Luke Shaw had a very good game. Alisson had a good game. Henderson and Fabinho at the back for you look really comfortable. Obviously, Jordan Henderson filling in a role which he in a position he doesn't normally play, but he's doing quite well there, which is good to see. It's good to see. Klopp always has that versatility. And then the most talked about thing I think was in the first half. Did you see they blew the whistle like too early before like the minute of extra added time? I saw that. And I think we were just like, did they blow the whistle too early there, or not? I'm not sure what you made of that situation there. It was quite a weird one.
It's just the whole game was just pretty confusing. A lot of it was frustrating on my end, anyways, being a resident Liverpool fan. Like the referees, I think, are having a bit of a mare this year. They have been for the past 2 years since VAR came in, and kind of ruined a lot of everything in the game. But it's what I can't remember the referee's name. He's kind of a good referee. He said if VAR was taken away and there was a foul and they complain that VAR wasn't there, and he's kind of right in a way. But I think it just needs a lot of improving. So they need to find a way to implement it and keep it there. But the whole game itself, it was kind of the same story for Liverpool for the most of the season. They can get shots off, but they just don't put them on target. And
Yeah.
from what we've seen from the past couple of seasons, is if you shoot at De Gea enough, he's going to let one in at some point. Like De Gea is a good keeper. Let's be honest, he's a fantastic keeper. But if you keep shooting at him, he's going to. If you keep shooting at any keeper, they're going to miss. They're going to miss one. So it's 17 shots with 3 on target. If you don't test the keeper, you're not going to score. In the famous words of Michael Owen, the king of obvious phrases.
King of obvious punditry. I think my most frustrating thing from the United end, I think Rashford or United as a whole were caught offside like 7 times in the first half, which was beyond frustrating. But one point that has definitely been in discussion with people that I know who are Premier League football fans is the linos in games at the moment, the linesmen and their calls for offside taking so long to go over I'm not sure. I mean, I understand that they have to leave if there's an element of doubt there, but the couple of times in full like clarity where Rashford was offside, I think it was evident, and you were seeing these instances of like the play being resumed. Obviously, the Liverpool arms going up, and like even a lot of the United players were like, well, hang on a minute, like he's probably going to call offside here. And then you're just waiting, and all of a sudden, like 10 seconds after it's gone, oh yeah, no, just check it out, definitely was offside, and it's like. That's one thing that I feel like is a real problem at the moment. Everyone said that the officials in the Premier League need adjusting. It's situations like that. Everyone's just like, oh come on, how could you have not seen that?
Half the time it's the rules, though. If you think about it, like half the time the rules are just changed too much, and I think the rules have been jigged about so much this year. you know, COVID permitting and everything, like all the rules and everything like that. Everything is just like, I don't know. It's weird. Like the refs before like all this rule changing were fine.
Mm.
Like some of the refs, like the best refs in the world, came from England.
Yeah.
You know, and for some reason they're crumbling under the pressure. I mean, yeah, you talk about the offside. Jamie Carragher, live on commentary, was slating the offside call because it was 10 minutes and he was obviously a couple yards in front. So it should have been
Yeah.
called instantly because that should have been, if that was a goal given, there's no point. It would have killed the momentum of the game. So I don't get it. I think the offside should just be cool as it is, and if they go and score, it's on them.
Yeah, I think if there was any differences in the game which could have swung the result in either team's favour, obviously Liverpool are missing still quite a few significant players in the dressing room, no more so than Van Dijk. But defensively, I don't think that's where their problems lied in that game. I think mainly someone of Diogo Jota's influence and performance from the start of the season would have been very good in that game. Someone like him to bring on definitely could have been a difference maker. And for us, I think for United, I would have liked to have seen Cavani start that game. I don't think Martial starting was the right decision. There were so many instances in that game where I feel like he could have done better. So I think Cavani would have been my choice to see starting rather than being brought on a bit later on. But
Oh,
it's
I'm
frustrating.
starting. I'm starting to question Martial at the moment.
So
I
am I.
really am.
Well, I mean, it's a case of I would never ever deny the fact that he's got the talent there because you've seen it so many times. But the problem with Martial is when he's out of confidence, when he's lacking in confidence, you can't get anything out of him. He's a very one-dimensional type of player. He's very skillful and he can score these really tricky goals. You've seen it before, like the odd touch around a defender and then like kind of like the last kind of like flick of the ball. He's very good at getting himself in these situations. He scored a great goal fairly recently against Aston Villa with his head. And I was thinking that was such a well taken goal, good technique. He dived low for the header. But there's so many circumstances where like the runs on him, he has pace as well. He's very quick, but he just doesn't use the pace. He plays almost like more of a stocky hold up play striker when that's not what he is. When really he's a tricky speedster who should just be, he's got the ability to just absolutely just go for it. And we've got the delivery now. We've got Pogba who's in fit and flying form. He probably should have scored in that Liverpool game, or definitely had a good chance for it. And Bruno's obviously in fantastic form, and Rashford's obviously in decent form as well. So the delivery's there, but it's just the output. I think if he's out of confidence, that output is just not going to come from anywhere.
No, I think when he's unmotivated, his effort on the attacking end, like when he's on the ball, there's no denying that his effort's there. But off the ball, he just doesn't want to get into these positions, and it's frustrating. I can see from a United fan's point of view where the frustration lies because he just doesn't want to get in the positions. He has the lack of motivation to make those outside runs. He likes to stay central, and if there's an outside overlapping run, take it, Martial. You could score from it. There's the exact same his debut against Liverpool, right? Did the exact same thing. He ran with the ball, scored a beautiful goal, and Martin Tyler went nuts. And
that forever lives in the heads of every Liverpool fan. That
it does, and
it will never ever leave.
That's why Martin Tyler is kind of revered by Liverpool fans at this point. But yeah, Martial is. I can't deny his talent. His talent's there. You just got to find it. And I don't know whether the Martial project is given another 2 years, and if it doesn't work, he's shipped off.
Yeah,
it could be another instance of what happened with Lukaku. He gets sent to the Serie A, bang, and he starts flying again.
I think that's the situation with a lot of these players now. Like, if he goes back to France or he goes and plays football for top flight football in Italy, I know for a fact he's going to do well. I know it. Everyone's like Lukaku. It's like, oh yeah, Inter Milan are going to take a gamble on Lukaku. No, they're not. Like, they're buying a proven striker. He was good at United. Martial's been good at United, but possibly when they're out of favour, out of confidence, or they don't fit a certain manager's playing style, it is best for the player to move on and get longevity out of their career. Lukaku wanted to leave United. United were happy to part ways with Lukaku. United got some money for him. Lukaku is in really good form over in Inter Milan. But, should United have sold him? I think we still should have sold him. Clearly, the situation wasn't going the way we wanted, and he's fit and flying form now. Like, I would much rather see Martial go and carry on his his career somewhere where he's going to get the most out of his playing style. It's good to get some new blood in, and we've had him for a very long time now. He was brought in when Louis van Gaal was manager from Monaco for around 50. And at the time, everyone was doubting that transfer, and I definitely feel like we've got a lot out of Martial, and he's been a good servant to the club. But it just gets to a stage after a while where you think, okay, maybe something needs to change. But I mean, 0-0 United Liverpool, that's not the first 0-0 we've seen in terms of derbies in the Premier League this season. Man United versus Man City and Chelsea Spurs were both 0-0 derbies. Obviously, a Manchester and a London derby there. It's nothing more disappointing, is it? Especially if it's your club. There's nothing more disappointing than going into a big game derby with a real fierce competitor and coming out with absolutely nothing, and just seeing nothing in the game. I mean, even a 1-1, I mean, it's still a draw, but you want to see goals flying in. But when 0-0s do come about, especially in the caliber of these kinds of games, it's hard to take. It's definitely hard to take.
Yeah. Like you just kind of think like like the kind of the topic of this podcast, are they worth watching? Like the build up was immense. There was interviews galore, the slow-mo of getting off the bus with the headphones looking all cool, and then you watch the games and it's like, that was not cool. What went on with with the game? It's kind of like, why are these teams playing so safe? Like, look at some of the other games that have had so many cards. Yeah, you don't want to get injured. Yes, COVID's about, but play the game of football and entertain us. Damn it.
Well, I mean, obviously Man United City 0-0, but then obviously we faced them in the League Cup, and that was a different story. 2-0 to City. Again, a bit more of an interesting game, but we definitely just ended up slipping off. City were definitely the better team, but it's worrying, I think, because if your team in these big games aren't performing, then because there's going to be plenty more. The Premier League this season it's both been awful and brilliant in terms of the competitiveness. The top six battle, the battle for the top of the Premier League is wide open. Anyone could do it. Liverpool haven't stormed it this year. City haven't stormed it this year. United haven't stormed it. Spurs haven't stormed it. It's still very much an open playbook. But 0-0 draws at the top of the Prem, no one likes to see it. But a more interesting game, probably the most interesting derby so far we've had in the Premier League, is probably the Merseyside derby.
Yeah, I would say that. Mainly because there was goals in it. But to be fair, when you look at the Manchester derby past games, there have been goals. The last Manchester derby that was played, we watched it I think it was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah.
March 20, I think it was March, just before. Sat in the pub watching it. McTominay scores a brilliant goal as well. Everyone's going nuts. It was great. Before that, United won 2-1 as well. Upsets can happen, and it's fantastic to see. And there's so many games that are good in that sort of sense. And Chelsea Spurs as well. That it's been proven there can be goals in that. I think Chelsea versus Spurs was it 2016? Eden Hazard.
Yeah. Well, that's now the Battle of Stamford Bridge. That's now one of the most iconic games in Premier League for the wrong reasons, obviously. But that is one of the most iconic derbies in Premier League history.
It's the thing, like this. I think instead of the games itself, it's more the times that we're in is causing the games to kind of be boring because they're playing too safe.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of teams are either just sitting back too much and not attacking, or they're doing too much defending and the other team aren't attacking as much. Like, it's one or the other, and it's resulting in a lot of boring games, but a lot of fun ones as well, as we'll probably get onto. But moving on to Liverpool Everton, a Merseyside derby. I think it was a fun little game. I mean, at least there was goals in it. But like from a Liverpool fan standpoint, it was very frustrating. But from an Everton standpoint, they were storming the top of the league. It was the Merseyside teams at the top of the table for a little bit. So I think with that in mind, I think that was a very interesting game to be like, oh, they finished 2-2. Wow, that was insane. With the high caliber teams that are involved and everything like that. I think that's where I think that could probably be one of the better derby games of the season. But it's still, I still don't think it was like too great, if you get what I mean. Like, you can't look at any of these derby games this season and go, yeah, that's going to go down in history. Like we said, the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the Manchester derby from last season. I can't name a Merseyside derby that's been outrageous. Maybe the one where Origi scored in the final minutes.
Or Jagielka scored that absolute belter.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
But I mean, I think with this year's Merseyside derby, there was definitely a lot of hype around Everton because of the summer they had. They brought in all of these top draw talents. Carlo Ancelotti's at the helm. It's a very interesting Everton project. So I think everyone was very keen to see how they'd face off against the champions, and they definitely bought it. They definitely brought the game to you. So I feel like, that has to be credited as one of the more exciting ones. And, obviously the next time you face Everton, I mean, that's the thing. Everton, a lot of the time they start quite well and they fall into a bit of mediocrity, which is a shame. But the next time they face you, it could be a different story.
There's a weird pattern with Merseyside derbies. The last two games have been draws. One's been a goal-filled draw, and the other one's been a 0-0. The game before that was a 5-2 victory for Liverpool, and then the game before that was a 0-0, then a 1-0, then a 0-0, then a 1-1, and it's like, listen, there's goals at one game and then there's not the next. It's so bizarre how the Merseyside derbies keep working, and it's unbelievable. Like, sometimes you just get such a dud game, and it's really disappointing to see that from two teams that in the past used to brawl out for these sorts of games. Like, you don't see that passion on the pitch anymore. Like, which is a shame, because you need some players that are dying for the badge that's on the shirt. A lot of players do that on a daily basis for Liverpool, and a lot of players do that for Everton. But I think that nowadays Everton's a stepping stone instead of wanting to fight for championships. Like, Everton's a stepping stone to get to a top six club instead of progressing to make Everton a top six club.
Another club that could be included in that conversation, I'd probably say, is Arsenal. I mean, if we're moving on, Spurs, Arsenal, the start. Well, they're the first kind of North London derby we saw this season was a 2-0 win to Spurs, and again, that it's a circumstance of like the Spurs fans, the Arsenal fans. It's like, oh yeah, they hate each other with a passion. They want to see their team do the other one over. But like now, it's just what I hear coming from Arsenal fans is like, oh god, here we go, and Spurs fans coming, oh come on, bring it on, let's that little easy win here, boys, and that's what it turned out to be. Kane and Son just run the show in every single game now, and all in all, Arsenal just haven't been up to par for a very long time. So that derby, where the shoe used to be on the other foot, obviously Arsenal would go into that game with massive amounts of confidence for the majority of it, and Spurs definitely on the back foot. How the tables have turned, and now Arsenal would always go into that game pretty much as the underdogs, and they have been for quite a while now. So obviously we've got another Spurs Arsenal link up to happen, but I don't see anything changing. I don't see anything changing.
No.
Arsenal do make a change. Obviously, Arsenal have had some, energy hopes recently, more injections of confidence. Mesut Ozil's finally been released from the club, which is good news for him. Fair play. Like, I'm actually happy for him. It would be good to see him get back to form of Fenerbahce. But
I'm really just on a side tangent, I'm really happy that Ozil's gone and playing football now. Not because no one knows why he was left out of the Arsenal team. There are a lot of rumours speculating political reasons that we're not going to get into, or maybe his form's just not dropped. Like, he refused to train with the under-23s and play with those for a bit. And there was like, oh, if he wanted to play football, he would go and play with them and try and get into the team. But if you're that unmotivated to play football, then there's something wrong with the club. So I'm glad that Ozil's got his release. I'm glad that he's with Fenerbahce. And it's not only was it a dream of Ozil, but apparently the whole Fenerbahce organisation did a dream to sign Ozil.
They honestly, they absolutely love him. Obviously, Ozil with links to Turkey as well. So I think they were so desperate to go and play, for in that country for a club which I'm pretty sure he supported as a kid, and want to go there and make make a big impact. And I don't know if you saw the footage of him getting off the plane, and they were just hundreds of fans cheering him. It was like Ronaldo arriving at Real Madrid. It was these absolutely incredible transfer moments. So, I think 100%, I think we could both say we're happy for him. A great player in his day, great player when he was in form for Arsenal and Real Madrid. So hopefully he can refine some of that form, because he's got it in his locker. He's got it there. So let's hope he can find it. But Arsenal have been quite lucky in finding some kind of form in Emile Smith-Rowe. Obviously a very young player, and he's coming in and he's definitely injecting with a bit of creativity. So come the next North London derby, potentially, now they've got a bit of creativity to get into attackers like Aubameyang and Lacazette, maybe we can see a different type of game. Maybe Arsenal can turn up for this one.
Hopefully. I mean, you'd hope so when it comes to a team like Arsenal. Like, Yeah, they just spanked Newcastle 3-0.
Yeah,
But that's not really hard with the way that Steve Bruce plays. Let's be honest. But like a lot of their results have been impressive. Beating Newcastle. I mean, they drew to Crystal Palace, which wasn't the greatest, but then they beat West Bromwich Albion 4-0. They beat Chelsea 3-1.
yeah,
They've been on a run of pretty good games. I think they've been undefeated since since their loss to Everton in mid-December.
yeah.
So they lost 2-1 and then they beat Chelsea 3-1, played Brighton, West Brom, who they beat, and they beat Newcastle, and then they drew to Palace as well. So Arsenal may be picking up form, but I still think they could finish mid-table. But again, Smith Rowe is a great player, and I think if he can fill in the shoes of Ozil that he's left, or they might bring in someone else in January that's still like a third of the month to go. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Well, it's a good point to mention that obviously they did beat Chelsea 3-1 in another London derby, which is definitely one to consider. So potentially there is still some fight there, It's just for the North London one, as influential as it is, and how devout the fan bases are, that we want to see more of an output in that particular game.
Yeah.
But one derby very recently, which I watched the entirety of the game and I could not believe what I was seeing. Black Country derby, Wolves versus West Brom, hasn't been one of those for a very, very long time in the Premier League. So it was very interesting to see. And West Brom getting a 3-2 win. And I just couldn't believe what I was watching for half of the game. Obviously, Wolves are without Raul Jimenez, which is rubbish because he's a top draw striker and he brings so much in that role for the club. And terrible injury. Thankfully, apparently he's up and trying to get back into training and stuff again. So hopefully he can be back soon. Because I think everyone enjoys seeing a bit of Raul Jimenez. He is a good player, but I've never seen a club like Wolves. We've been doing this podcast since September 2019. And we've said from the very start that Wolves are a weird club. That's just the sentence, isn't it? Wolves are a weird club. It just keeps on being repeated.
We need to get this on some merchandise and sell it. I
swear, like Wolves are a weird club.
Yeah, they are. And like, we're uni based in the Midlands. So there's going to be a lot of Wolves fans. Let's set up shop.
Wolves are a weird club.
Let us know in the comment to this if you'd buy a Wolves is a weird weird club t-shirt.
I was I just couldn't believe it because, like, obviously 3-2 suggests there was a real contest in this game, but Wolves looked terrible. They looked awful. Obviously, West Brom did score 2 penalties. I won't, take that away, but 2 penalties were scored. Willy Bolly conceded a penalty, then scores at the under end of the pitch. It was a very strange game, but I've never seen they've changed none of their playing style. Raul Jimenez is a big striker, a big bulky striker, and he can score a lot of goals with his head. They just keep lofting these balls in and nobody's there. And at the moment, they're currently placing their faith in it's Mario Silva, isn't it?
Fabio Silva.
Fabio Silva. It's Mario Silva.
Who is Mario Silva?
Who is Mario Silva?
No, I was thinking of the guy that plays for Frankfurt at the moment. That's Andre Silva. I don't even know who Mario Silva is.
Yeah, I'm getting confused here, but yeah. But yeah, so right now they're placing all their faith in Fabio Silva, and he's 18 years old, and he scored in that game, which was interesting. He scored the other goal for Wolves, and it was a well taken goal, but he's not ready. He's too young. They spent a lot of money on him, so they clearly have faith, but he's not ready yet. He's not looking good.
It feels as if, right, the Wolves organisation have been playing a bit too much Football Manager, because not only they bought Fabio Silva, who has high potential on that game, but they also bought in Catrone, who had high potential, but he's just not all that. Let's be honest, he's not ready for the Premier League.
No. Well, they bought him back from loan because of the Jimenez situation, and he was failing to integrate in the first sense, and I can see why they did it. He's their player, but it just isn't looking good.
He's just not all that. Let's be honest. They brought in Kijana whoever from Liverpool as well.
Yeah. Nelson Semedo from Barcelona.
Nelson Semedo made sense because he was a Barcelona player, but then he got ripped to shreds by Bayern Munich in the Champions League, and that's probably why.
He hasn't looked ideal there. He's looked okay. Matt Doherty looked like far more comfortable in that position. A great purchase from Tottenham.
Yeah, and then the last one, Ryan Ait-Nouri as well, who again I don't see as a player ready for the Premier League. Like, he's not.
He's been very hit and miss. In times that I've seen that against us, he was very good. I thought he was very good, but again, not going to set the world alight. And these are players which need other talent around them, and they rely a lot of their games on like. Is he like 35, Jean Moutinho now, and he's playing like every single game for Wolves. He might be older than that. And he's playing every single game for Wolves. And it's like, no. And Ruben Neves has had 2 seasons of inconsistency now as well. I honestly think if you look at the last few results for Wolves, I think that Nuno could be in trouble. I don't think they'll get rid of him, but I think that Nuno could be in trouble.
I think, yeah, you're not wrong. I think Nuno. I think there's a bit of magic that's there. I kept saying that the Wolves needed a lot more investment, and they'd be in top 6 club. They haven't had that investment. They brought in Nelson Semedo, and that wasn't enough. Yes, Raul Jimenez not being there is a big blow.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, the last couple of results, they've been on a really bad dry patch. Like the last game that they won, it was over a month ago.
Yeah.
Against Chelsea. And that was when Chelsea had a really bad patch of form. Like they go out and beat Chelsea, but then the game before that, they lose 1-0 to Villa. And then the game after Chelsea, they lose 2-1 to Burnley.
Yeah.
And then since that Burnley game, they haven't won. I think they drew 3-3 with Brighton. They lost 1-0 to Man United. They lost 2-1 to Everton. And then the Black Country Derby.
Yeah, well, losing 1-0 to Villa is a kind of a derby in its own right, obviously being from the Midlands. But, you know, it's exactly like I was saying. You know, they're having a terrible run of form. And it can't, although Raul Jimenez is a massive loss, it's really hard in saying that it's all down to his injury. I think there's a lot of issues that are going on there. And in situations where clubs, which, you know, obviously they came up to the Premier League very, very quickly, you know, from when they got promoted and they were performing really well. And they've been doing this since we started the podcast. They'll go out and they'll beat a United, a Chelsea, they'll get points off a City or a Liverpool, and then they'll go and waste all of that by like losing to Burnley or something weird like that. Wolves are a weird club. And I think, like we said, you know, out of form, I think Nuno, in a lot of situations, when you look at results like this, you start to say managers are in trouble. And Nuno's a good manager, and I think Wolves it would definitely be a shame because I think Nuno and Wolves just go really well together now, and he knows the system and he knows what he wants to do. But is he losing the dressing room? I have no idea. I'd love to know what people think about that. If anyone has any opinions on that, please comment, please get involved on social media because it's a very strange situation.
It would be interesting to see like how like either of us would fix the situation. Maybe that's a podcast for another time, like with different clubs, like you know, setting a budget for Wolves and rebuilding them and ensuring that they can get back to where they were because they have a lot of good players. It's just there's a lot of inconsistency there. So let us know either on social media, they're on the screen at the moment, or down in the comments if you watch on YouTube. Let us know if that's an idea that you guys like.
Yeah, definitely. And then moving on again, we're sticking with West Brom from a 3-2 win to a 3-0 loss at the hands of Villa, another Midlands-based derby. Aston Villa, a club this season, again, mainly being impressive, I think, and definitely having a better season than they did last year. Last year, they were terrible. It was just a Grealish show. And although it is very much still Grealish pulling the strings there, they invested well. They've got good players in, and it's looking a bit better. I still think there may be another. They probably won't spend in January, but I think there is another summer away before they're really more solidified. And they've also, although that contract was signed, they still have to keep Grealish.
Yeah, I think to be fair, if Villa keep this up, they keep fighting to get into those European competitions. You know, they beat Liverpool 7-2. Why aren't they building on that in January? Like, here are the good players, right? Here are the good players. Bertrand Traore's come out and he's found a new lease of life since his signing in the summer. Jack Grealish is playing arguably the best football of his career so far, and he's still in his early 20s. John McGinn, he's a fantastic player. Ollie Watkins, who was, you know, there was a lot of doubt behind him coming into the league from the Championship, but he scored a hat trick again. Was it a hat trick against Liverpool? You know, we made him look like Ronaldo. You know, and they've got so many pockets of good players. Yet, I think there are a lot of still inconsistencies, and they should have built upon that. They've got kind of rich owners.
Yeah.
So the investment could have been there.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there a few maybe one or two more windows away from being a real competitive side if they can keep Grealish. That's the main thing. They got to keep him. Emiliano Martinez, fantastic goalkeeper. So they've got no worries between the sticks. I really, really like having Martinez.
If you think about it, they're kind of in the position that I kept saying Wolves were in. They're a couple of transfer windows away from being contenders for European competitions. That's exactly what you just said. And that's what I was saying about Wolves throughout 2020. They are 2 or 3 transfer windows away. This upcoming summer could be the best summer for Villa. Or, if they lose Jack Grealish, probably the worst. But then you take that 100 million or whatever you get for him and invest that in a new great playmaker.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to all go on him. It could go on a 23-year-old. It could go on someone that just spend it in a way that you can properly invest it. Yes, you're not a Liverpool, you're not a Manchester United, you're not a Man City, but you've got to show intent. And that's how Man City got to where they are now. They showed intent to win the title straight away after they got new ownership. After they started contending in the top 4, they showed intent straight away.
Yeah.
They bought in Robinho. They lured all these fantastic players, and they built that. The Man City are a great example of a modern day giant who have just come up. Like, if Newcastle would have taken over and they followed Man City's kind of ruthlessness, I think that they could have also been matching them. Obviously, they didn't get taken over, and we hear all of the Newcastle fans around the world crying every night.
It's not rocket science either. I think if they lost Grealish, it's tough to replace players of that caliber. But if they need a creative in the team, after losing someone like Grealish, I feel like they do what other clubs do what Leicester did with James Maddison. Look at lower clubs in the league and try and poach. Norwich somehow still have Buendia. Don't know how that's happened, which is a very, very bizarre situation.
Imagine Cantwell and Grealish playing together.
That could be interesting, couldn't it?
Oh, you just think about these players that could link up so well in the Premier League. I don't think Villa would need a Buendia because he plays on the right, and they've just brought in Bertrand Traore. I think Bertrand Traore plays, but picking up a player like Cantwell to take a lot of the creativity away from Grealish, because a lot of the times teams will focus on Grealish because he is a fantastic player. If you've got one other player like Cantwell to take away the creative duties for some of the game and create pockets of space, like McGinn does as well. Imagine a midfield with McGinn, Grealish, and Cantwell. I think it's a damn shame that no one's picked up Cantwell yet. I think a Football Manager esque rebuild for Aston Villa there needs it, especially in my head. Anyways, I might hop on FIFA after this.
Do a few tweets. We would like to know people's opinions on Derby so far in the Premier League this season. I'll end with a final question post to you, Reese. Do you feel like the Premier League derbies are keeping their hype, or do you feel like they're regressing? Do you feel like they're getting worse? Do you feel like the scenario we're in at the moment maybe takes a lot of it away? What do you feel like is needed to get the derbies the hype again?
I would say the hype's the big word. Let's be honest, hype is always going to be around derbies. Like I said, the Manchester derby, right? There was all the hype in the world. As I said, the headphones on, Marcus Rashford coming off the bus looking, oh, I'm so cool, I'm about to score a goal. Nope. Kevin De Bruyne's like coming off the bus with his headphones, I'm going to get an assist. Nope. It's all hype. Let's be honest, it's all hype, and it's all hype. And if it's not there and the managers don't have the tactics, if the managers are playing for draws, yes, United getting a draw against City was a fantastic result for them. Technically, it was a good result for both teams because neither of them lost and dropped points in a top 6, as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that's as open as ever. So the hype's always going to be there. You're always going to have your cool Bernard Sky Sports feel, Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher hyping you up before the game, and then you go out and disappoint, and then you got Roy Keane and Mika Richards complaining after it. It's always going to happen. Those types of games are always going to happen, but I don't think the derbies are ever going to lose their touch. They're never going to lose their hype. Everyone's going to get hyped for a Merseyside derby. Everyone's going to get hyped for the North London derby, especially those American fans that did that cringy thing on the bridge. But them aside, I still that video lives on in my head forever. By the way, but those types of games, everyone's always going to be excited for them, and they're either going to live up to the hype, or they're just going to flop. And if they're all, I think the current day, as we say, COVID-19 is there's a lot more things going on. Catch the previous podcast if you haven't watched it already with Jacob talking about whether the Premier League should be called off or whether there should be severe consequences for those that do break these rules that they've been put in to help safety. And if these rules have been followed by the players, then I'm not sure if managers would have to be so tactically inept when it comes to these sorts of games. Don't constantly sit back. So because if two teams sit back, then what's the point? I think that these sorts of games, that the hype's always going to be there, and it's just up to those teams to get results. And excite the fans, because this is our prime source of entertainment here. And at least like the people that are out on the pitch should at least be like trying to put their heart out for those people that are suffering in these times. Like there are some people in wards that are holding on to their teams for until they get better. That's their source of entertainment. That's the source of everyone's entertainment. And the fact that they aren't putting they're playing for the badge on the shirt, or it doesn't seem like it anyways. It's a bit disappointing, really.
Well, it's all to see, isn't it? We've still got another half of the Premier League season left to go, with a lot more derbies to be played. But we would like to know your guys' opinions on this. So as always, if you ever want to come on, share an opinion, or if you ever want to potentially be on the show, you can get a hold of us at theaveragepundits@outlook.com. We are on Twitter at Pundits Average, and we are on Facebook at The Average Pundits, as well as Instagram at The Average Pundits. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Music, thank you very much for streaming us, and do make sure you are giving us a follow on those platforms. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do give us a subscribe and a like, and do share the video around as well. As always, thank you very much, Reese, for joining me.
No, you kind of always have to look at the derbies. There have been some good derbies this week. Not this week, this season. You look at the Villa one. You look at both Midlands one. They've been fine. The top six games as well, when Spurs beat Man United 6-1. I mean, but the Premier League is definitely. I had to get that jab in there.
But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff to come about.
But there is one key thing to kind of mention. For the first time ever in this podcast history, Joe, your team, Man United, are the top of the league. For the first time. First time in this podcast history.
I don't know how it happened, but that is mad. That is weird, isn't it? First time in podcast history, Manchester United top of the Premier League.
Oh, they ain't gonna finish that.
We'll see. Ollie's tabletop of the Reds.
If Manchester United win the league, there will be a post on the Average Pundits Instagram and Twitter. So make sure you're following. At the end of the season, if Man United finish top of the league, I will have a picture on there in a Man United shirt.
There we go. I'll provide the shirt. Perfect. There we go. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, and we will see you next time.
I'm going to regret that.